Okay, that's loud. Peace and blessings. Hey, I definitely want to welcome you back for another great episode. You know, my name's Celebrity Interviewer. I said it. You know, I'm out of Chicago, Chicagoland, Midwest area. You know, the best city in the whole world. And man, you know, I'm here for another entertaining night. You know what I mean? This is Scar Tissue Talk Show, and this is actually where we feature people who has or have been suffering with self-esteem or have overcome, that is, I should say, self-esteem over their physical scars, from handicaps to domestic abuse to surgery, car accidents, um, gunshot victims, burn victims, survivors, you know, mental health, people, those with disabilities, you know, anything that falls under that umbrella or within that community. You know, I'm grateful to be able to feature people who are so strong on this show. And I have another man, just incredible. This woman is incredible. She's actually based out of Chicago originally, but she's out there down south in South Carolina. You know, my family from North Carolina, on my mama's side. So you know what I mean. I remember going to Myrtle Beach, but you know that's another topic. That's another topic. But hey, this is episode 8. Did y'all know that? This is episode 8. I know y'all missed this show, but we are officially back, and I'm proud to be able to come back with the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, top most influential woman by 180 Life Celebrity Magazine. I'm talking about 2023 Miss Black America Elegant Diva. I'm talking about visionary leader. I'm talking about the philanthropist, the model, the fashion designer, the wife, and proud survivor. And let's not forget, the ambassador for the blind and visually impaired of the United Nations, the one and only Queen Goddess Jenkins, Goddess Mystique Jenkins. Please, peace to you, Queen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. I am so honored. Thank you so very much. Hey everybody. I'm honored to be here. How you doing, King?
Oh, I'm great. I'm great to you, Queen. Big salute to you. I'm just so happy to have you here. And I forgot to say, Army vet, correct?
That's right. Proud.
Right,
Go
and
Army. That's
right,
right.
and military veteran. You know what I'm saying? Can't forget that. We appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Um, but yeah, you are just truly amazing. And I want to first shout out my friend out of the Virginia,
Yes.
aka the V, you know what I'm
Big
saying, the warm hearted
yes.
diva, Antoinette, where I first learned of you, you know what I mean, where I saw your interview, and you know, when you was speaking, I was just like, wow, like I always be trying to catch her interviews because it usually conflicts with some of my interviews. So I was
Okay.
grateful to catch her. And when you were on, I'm just like, wow, who is this person? Because your story was just so motivational, so inspirational. And I'm just like, wow, this woman's incredible. And then to find out you from the land, you know what I'm
Yes.
saying, originally.
That's right.
So I mean,
Originally, yes.
so yeah, so shout out to the warm hearted diva and thank you for her connecting one for both of us. You know, I'm so grateful. And man, like I say, I'm just motivated by your story, and I'm just
Yes.
grateful if you could be able to, you know, kind of share, you know, how you have overcome, you know,
Mm,
so many different challenges in your life, you know, even before the scarring and the
right.
scars and the disability or, you know, a new profound miracle
Yes.
that you have turned your life into. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? If you could just kind of share your story, if you don't mind, for my audience, because
Okay.
they didn't hear your story like I had the pleasure of hearing your story. And again, this
Absolutely.
is our official talk show, and this is the one and only Goddess Mystique Jenkins.
That's right. Peace and
Yeah,
blessings.
yeah.
As it was
Peace,
stated,
peace.
I am originally from Chicago, Illinois, to be exact. Parkway Gardens Projects is where I came from, 63rd and Kings Drive, which people know today as O Block. That's where I'm from. And I was born, was one of four children. I had two brothers and a sister. And my mother was a typical single parent. We grew up in the projects, living on, public assistance. And my mother was always to me a mom that was different. You know what I'm saying? I knew my mom wasn't like other moms, but I knew my mom was different, not really understanding, but I knew it was. But one thing I can say is my mom tried to do the best she could, as a single parent with four children, by day, you know, of course, when I'm younger, I didn't really know, but I knew my mom started off, she was a CNA, but my mom had a very, very bad drug addiction and she suffered from mental illness. So growing up, being younger, I remember having to see things like coming out and coming home from school and early age, my mom laid out, in the kitchen, the gas on, things like that, not really understanding, but just knowing my mom was different. But, you
Mm,
know, my mom at nighttime, coming up now, I know what she did, but my mom was a dancer and she was also a prostitute. And a lot of times there were a lot of like different men, but there was one in particular that was around all the time, and he wasn't the best of person. And it's like it was a lot of abuse very early and young that I grew up seeing, so for me sometimes my mom leave at night, didn't come home, so it was my job, get everybody up, make sure we go to school, get to school. And a lot of times for us, it was important because of school, a lot of times that's how we ate. We look forward to the breakfast and the lunch and things of that nature because a lot of times it was hard.
mm,
My mom had a lot of different men coming in and out. And so at a very early age, I was a victim of sexual assault. And I
mm,
remember telling my mother, and my mother didn't believe me. She actually, thought like, why you, thought that I was lying and trying to, be grown in front of him. So at an early age, that kind of telling something like that made me feel like, you know what I mean? So I took this abuse for, because I was very protective, you know what I'm saying, over my sister. But this
right.
went on, and this was a person that, my mom, she later on, I found out that this was the guy who was actually her pimp. And it was this one particular night my mom had left. She wanted to go. She was like, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna be back. And I begged my mom not to leave. I remember like literally like trying to do everything to get her to just stay, not knowing then that that was the last time I was gonna see my mom. Um,
Mm,
at this point I was 8 years old, and I remember, or 7.5 going on 8, and I remember like any other morning, it wasn't no big deal, that she wasn't there. It was like, okay, get up, get ready, go to school. And this particular morning, you start out, you go to breakfast, you on the playground, and my brother had got into like pretty much a fight with this kid on the playground because he was talking, talking stuff. So of course, us, one, you mess with one, you mess with all. So
that way.
the boy ended
Mhm,
up saying, oh, that's why y'all mama in jail. And so we thinking like, don't be lying, so we get to fighting. They come, we get taken into the office, but as we get taken in the office, we notice my uncle is already there. And so come to find out, they had all of us. They had my younger brother and sister in the office, and me and my older brother came in, and they pretty much set us down. And that's when my uncle, um at first he gave me the newspaper because he didn't know how to tell me. So my mother's crime actually made the front page of the paper. My mom ended up killing that gentleman, her who was her pimp. She killed him, and it made the front page of the newspaper. So how I initially found out, my uncle gave me the paper and he told me to read it. And when I read it, when I got halfway through it, I look up at my uncle and my uncle began, he was like, we're gonna take you home. But it's like at that moment it couldn't click in my head. And I remember my uncle, me, my brothers and sisters, they walking us out of that school with the guidance town, they walking us out those doors. And I'm thinking to myself, like, walking out, I'm still remembering, like, this can't be real, but it really was. My mom ended up um, being charged with capital murder, and my mom
Wow.
was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
Mm.
When this happened, during this process, we had never ever interacted with our father. He had never been in our life. um Initially, when my mom went to, got arrested and went to jail, we were with my grandmother, and she made it very clear to the social worker that she wasn't going to keep us. I remember my grandmother telling the lady that, she can't take care of all these kids. If she wouldn't have did what she did, she could have took care of her own kids. And this was my mother's mom. But my grandmother and my mother had a lot of issues due to, like, different things that she went through, physical, sexual abuse coming up. So my grandmother wasn't, we did not receive the typical grandmotherly love like most kids, you know what I'm saying? So when my father surfaced, I was 9 at this point. He came, and my father, because at this point when we got taken, you get a check. So it's like he came around, and now I believe it was for money, because the way we were treated within that time, that's no way that nobody should treat their kids. My dad had a severe drug addiction. He was addicted to crack cocaine and an alcoholic. And his new wife, she made it very clear she did not care for us. We weren't her kids, and there was a lot of abuse. My father sexually assaulted me, and went did this for quite often. And my father suffered from mental illness as well. I didn't know then, but he's paranoid schizophrenic. So it was times my father would think I was my mother, and just very, it was traumatizing. And I never said anything because I didn't want us to get split up. And I remember going to school one day, and I didn't even know the little thing of what a menstrual cycle was. All I knew, I was in the bathroom, and I didn't know what was going on. And they ended up, they got the nurse to come in, and I ended up going in the office, and she told me what was happening, but I was losing a lot and I got real faint. And I was taken to the hospital, and that's where it was, from an exam, they found out that I had been assaulted, and I didn't want to say anything. So I did, and they questioned everyone. We ended up going, home with my dad, and from there, my dad took us, and he left Illinois. I remember him taking us to Cook County Jail and telling us that was the last time we was gonna see my mom, because we were leaving Illinois, and he meant it. And I still remember when we went into the jail to see my mom behind the glass, and being crying and screaming and having to be picking up and taken out of the jail, because that was still my mom. And, from there, my father took us through a lot of unnecessary abuse, from physical abuse and neglect, which led to us being placed in the system. My dad going on the run, and then a whole nother set of abuse from being in the system. And me and my brothers were split up, but I always stayed with my sister. So it's like when I got to the age, I was like 12 years old, and I had been in so many different placements. I just felt like I was better off on my own. I felt like my sister was good, so I ran away at 12. And it's like, running away on the streets is only one thing. You can always say, though, it wasn't the church people on the streets. It wasn't them. It was the people that they looked at. It was the gangs. They were there. You know what I'm saying? They was there to be the family I didn't have, to be the protection I needed, to teach me how to, you know what I'm saying? Not too much, I'ma say, it was survival. You know what I'm saying? And that led me to connect back up with my brothers, and that's all we knew was survival. Being involved in a lot of things that I'm not proud of, but it was a way to where, we young and we on the street and we had to do what we had to do. And
Right.
which led to, my brothers, due to gang related activities and other crimes that were committed, ended up getting sentenced to 44 years,
Mm.
as juveniles. And at this point, I can't even begin, to tell you what it feels like to hear that and to know that, my mom was gone, now my brother's gone, and it's like I ain't even know how to wrap my head around that. You know what I'm saying? And but I knew I never forget when they told me, you gonna be next. You gonna be in prison like the rest of your family. And I remember in that moment, it sparked an anger in me. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, you can't tell me what I'm gonna be.
Right.
And
Exactly.
but I had to find a way. Like I had nowhere else, so that led to me going back to getting back into the system of the caseworker. I hadn't been in school, but by this time I'm 15, turning 15, about to turn 16. But I tested in spite of not being in school since 12 years old. I was able to go into school as a junior. I went through to school all through the summertime, emancipated myself, and ended up graduating early and really going into
Wow.
the military. And that's what changed my life. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It
That's
wasn't
incredible.
nobody, there at my graduation. It was nobody there to, but you know what I'm saying? I was able to write my brothers and write my mom. I was the first to graduate. You know what I'm saying? I was the first to go into service, which led to me, being able to go to college, and do something different and kind of showing them even behind the walls like they were proud because I was, doing something different. And I thought, everything was together. You know what I'm saying? I got my sister. I found nursing. I fell in love with nursing. It's something I love to do. At this point, when I ended up meeting, my um, kid's father. I was a mom. I was on my way, I was on my way to pursuing a career as a nurse practitioner, to the point that I was literally in my last at the end. I
Mm.
only had 2 months left until graduation. Literally, I was 28 years old. I worked
Yeah.
overnight in the hospital, as an ER nurse, and I worked from 7 at night and 7 till 7 in the morning. And I went to work like any other day and worked, finished my shift, got off, got my sister. We went and got my niece from overnight center and got on the road, and never knowing that that moment, was going to be the turning point in my life. You know what I'm saying? And all I know is to wake up and it's dark and I can't move. I can't, I can't speak. I just remember just my body was there, but it's like I didn't know. And then just to hear that, you was involved in this car accident, and I'm just like, okay. And I'm hearing this, and from the trauma, I'm hearing, I lost two of the most important people in my life, and then I'm telling it, and then I'm being told that I'm blind and I
Wow.
can't respond. I can't say anything because
Mm.
I'm coming out of a coma. So I can't even begin to this day, 14 years later, I could still always, when I tell this story, feel the chills of that moment because I couldn't even say anything. And it's like having to go through the transformation of learning how to speak again, walk again, do all of this, and coming out and not being able to explain to now my 8-year old son why mommy can't make it from the car door to the front door to him. And all I remember thinking was that, God, I was so angry Cause I'm like, I felt like it was the biggest joke. You I went through hell from childhood, and now I finally and now I'm blind. I remember thinking like, why didn't you let me die? I'd rather have been dead. Like, I've been independent my whole life, and now I can't even walk on my own. I can't even see my face. And I wanted to do just that. I wanted to die. And I tried to take my life within the first month that I was home. Over, I had 13 attempts back and forth
Mm.
because I didn't want to live. I didn't even feel like it was life. And I would go to the hospital, come back, they Baker rack me. I would try to starve myself. I didn't want to come out the room. And this went on until the last time. And I came home, and I remember my son coming in the room. After coming home, he put his hand on my knee and he was like, Mommy, I'll help you. I'll help you. And it was in that moment that every time people be like, I be like, but I remember like what it was like not to have my mom there. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, no matter what, I gotta show up for him. So my baby was the reason that I fought. That's all I could say. You know what I'm saying? And I literally he that's how I started to navigate my life without sight. I didn't know about schools for the blind in the beginning. I didn't even
Yeah.
have a cane in the beginning when everything
Mm.
happened to me. I literally had to go by just self-taught little homemade remedies I would try to do to help myself know what's the difference between from taking rubber bands to putting it on certain things to know which one was which, and having the assistance and teaching myself how to navigate. And that's how I got by. And in the midst of it, I had became, I guess, someone to the my at the time, the father of my kid that I was with, to me it was like I began to be said that I was a burden. I was no longer looked at like I was the same. I was no longer, of course, making the money and doing the things. I was still trying to figure out how to, walk and navigate, and things like that. So my life began a spiral of turning into becoming a victim of domestic violence. It started, with verbal things, being made fun of and doing things of that nature, and then just being degraded and called out of my name, just different things, and the infidelity, and thinking because I couldn't see, I didn't know what was going on. And when I would confront him, there would be the hitting and the one time that led to me going to the hospital, and how I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And it was something about even that moment was robbed of me, because I felt like, when I did do this, it was like I was in a relationship, but it was like this was something that was forced on me to do. So it wasn't like I was happy, like with my son. I was like, how could now I can't see? At least I knew what my son looked like, but now, and then I found out I was having a girl. But the same reason that kept me to fight to learn how to live without my sight was the same reason that kept me to fight to save my life. When I found out, I don't know what it
Yeah.
was about having a girl. I didn't want her to grow up like I grew up, thinking my mom was weak and, letting the man. I didn't want her to see that. I didn't. I wanted her to see somebody to be proud of. And so that's what led me to literally um start to plan my escape. That's what I called it, because I knew I was gonna leave, and I knew
Yeah.
I wanted better for me, you know. And I found out about a hospital through going to having a lady who came over from her church, and she told me about Baskin Palmer in Miami, Florida, which was the number one eye institute. And I was like, okay. So I never ever wanted to accept that I would never see again. I just never wanted to accept that. And it was devastating even after I gave birth to my daughter. Giving birth as a mother, I had knew what my son looked like. You know what I'm saying? At least I
Yeah.
knew an image. You feel me? But to feel a child grow in you, you know,
Yeah.
and kick and it's your girl. You know, I'm a woman. Everyone her little girl, and to give birth and to not be able to see your baby's face and to have everybody saying how beautiful and you can't see her. I can't even explain to you how I could never wrap my head around the fact I would never ever get to see my baby. And so I just wanted her to see better. And when I couldn't take no more other abuse and I had a plan, I had my daughter in. I remember, you know, it's like everybody, you feel like everybody's watching you. Everything's a test. Like they think you're incapable of everything. But I took care of my daughter. She was never harmed. You know, my son had to go to school. It was me. And I did it. And when I got up to where my daughter was old enough, and then I said, okay, I'm gonna go because I did not want, if I had to go through life blind, I'm not finna have to go through life being felt like I'm less than and just being, you know, I was like, no, I'm not. And the only reason why I stayed because it was for some time. That's what I thought. I had to take this from him. Like, who gonna want me? I'm blind. I can't do nothing. Cause that's what I thought about myself. But I stepped out on faith and I just wanted to go. And I got on that bus and I left. And when it was the time and it took me to Florida, and that was, you know, having the best decision of my life because I was coming to Florida to go to Baskin Palmer to see if they can do anything to restore my sight. And I just wanted to be somewhere different. And I did that. And in turn, I learned out about when I was coming from in Florida, when you're legally blind, you have paratransit. So there was a company that came to get me to take me to anywhere I had to go. I would have to call and they would come. And the driver was like, you know, one day that I got picked up and he said, oh, you must be coming for that school for people like you. I said, what do you mean, people like me? He said, who are blind? I said, what school? And it was like, you know, and I was like, okay. And she gave me the information, the driver, and I called that next day, and that's when I, for the first time, mind you, after living with no sight at all and not having any training for 7 years, within that time it brought me to Florida, and within that time I was able to now learn about schools for the blind, and that's how I learned about
Wow.
assistive technology. I learned that there are computers that talk. I learned that I could learn braille and I could read and uh, I can navigate in the kitchen. There's aids and it's like this whole world opened up, and I was like, okay, I can do this. And I remember going through that first assessment, and I was just like, okay, they were amazed at how much I could do and never had training, to where the course, they were already like 3 weeks in and they immediately put me in the class. And when I tell you, I dove into every bit of the assistive technology, every training that I needed, I absorbed it because I was determined to be able to be who I was before. And the every class we had, at the end of the day, we had an adjustment to blindness group, and there were 7 classes, all would come together and we would talk. And for the very first time I shared my story, and everyone was in tears, including the teachers. And that next day I was asked if I would speak at the graduation, and I'm like, I'm not getting up in front of nobody and telling nothing. Like, I could talk to you guys because we're, you know, it was a safe zone, but I don't want to do it. And I'll never forget, Kyle Johnson, and he and Richard Aleem. They were like, Goddess, you need to tell your story. You've been a big inspiration here. And I was like, okay. And that was the first time I told my story. And at that graduation, Lucille O'Neal, the mother of basketball NBA star Shaquille O'Neal, she was there. And it was no one knew that Lucille O'Neal had a visual impairment herself, and she had just wrote a book called "Walk Like You Got Somewhere to Go." And I
Mm.
remember when she came up to me, I was like starstruck because I had never met no celebrity before or anything. And she came
Yeah.
up to me and she was in tears and she was like, you are such an inspiration. And I was like, remember thinking like, and I told her, I said, do you know who you are? What do you mean I'm an inspiration? And she was like, no. And she invited me to come on her radio. She was going to be on a radio station, and that's what started me sharing my story. And then I remember after graduation, I told the administrator, I said, I can do this job and I'm gonna go back to school. And I was like, I might didn't get my finish and get my master's for nursing, but I'm gonna get my master's in visual rehabilitation because I wanted to be a teacher like the instructor that I had, Ginger Oreskovich. She was my instructor, and to me, she gave me a new life. She taught me that didn't take physical sight to have vision, and now I knew what I wanted to do. And I did that. I applied for a scholarship. I got it. I went to school and I completed my master's course. And I walked my class across the stage totally blind with my master's degree. Okay. And nobody tell me nothing. No,
That's
that
true.
was such the proudest moment. And I was just so excited to be able to be a teacher and teach people this life the way I got it and be able to feel that. But they put me with the youth in the beginning. I worked with high school and junior high school age kids. And one thing that bothered me was the lack of self esteem, self confidence, them feeling like, and I'm like, hearing stories from the parents, they didn't want to go to their homecoming. And I remember feeling like, you're beautiful still. And when I first heard a story from one of my young ladies who was she was a sophomore in high school, legally blind, going to a regular school, and she was in a abusive relationship. And she's talking to me, and I'm hearing myself, well, I'm blind and he likes me, and I remember thinking like, no, it's like I had to change that narrative because they weren't seeing anything that was depicting different, if that makes sense. And then
Yeah.
I was always like, they knew when I was coming because I was the teacher. Oh, Miss Goddess, you got on heels? Yeah. They knew. So it was like, I said, you know what? That's what sparked me wanting, from being an instructor, working with the children, and from that dynamic, I wanted to show them that there was nothing that they couldn't do. So in 2019, I started becoming involved heavily in the blind and visually impaired community. And every year nationally, we have the National Federation of the Blind, and it's a convention every year in a different state to promote awareness. And October is actually Blind Awareness Month. And so I
Mm.
went to my first convention in 2019 and I met a wonderful lady by the name of Crystal Allen, and she was the founder of Eyes Like Mine Incorporated. And she came up to me and she told me about a beauty pageant. And she was from Newark, New Jersey. At these conventions, you meet visually impaired and blind people from all over and sighted. They're big conventions. So I was
Right.
like, I don't know about no beauty pageant. So I said, well, if you need help, I'll help you. So basically helped out, volunteer, worked until 2022. I decided I had by this time put on the very first inclusive homecoming in Orlando. I had started doing all types of activities to incorporate the sighted with the blind, doing different types of interactive workshops to kind of give a different perspective. And in 2022, I had the great idea I was going to enter the Miss Blind Diva pageant. And this is the only pageant for blind and visually impaired women. I couldn't even walk in heels, but I said, okay, I'm gonna do this pageant because of what it represented. And that year was one of the happiest and one of the most tragic years of my life, because right before the pageant, me and my brothers, despite them being incarcerated, we always had a great relationship, even though, as you know, no, they're not supposed to have phones and all of that, but everything they did still have, and we communicated. They were all I had, and so they were very supportive. I was closer to one, and we always, and I told him about everything just because we could talk a little bit more often. And he knew about the pageant. He was always proud of me, and he ended up taking his life right before the pageant. And I found out, and it was devastating, and I wanted to quit. I tried to quit. I actually did quit the pageant, and I wouldn't have never even did it if I didn't get a chance to read a note that was left for me. And at the end, it said, "You better go for that crown." It was apologizing, but thanking me for all that I ever tried to do. And I remember thinking, I never quit anything in my life, but I was so hurt. But then I was like, man, I failed them because I quit. And I remember that night I called the director of the pack, called Chris. She said, well, if the called the founder, Crystal Allen, and she said, well, if you can get everything in and get the director to do your practice, then you can still do it. All of the women for the pageant, they were supported. They were sending their love. And these were my ladies that were competing against me. But it was so much love that I made it. I got to compete, and I won. And when I won that crown, it was like, I just remember looking up, to the sky, and saying I did it. And I just reminded myself that, I can't stop. You know what I'm saying? Like every time I went through a painful situation, it's like a blessing came, and I got stronger. It's like through my pain, it gave me strength. And during that time, that year of me being Miss Blind Diva, I wanted the world to know that blindness did not mean that I'm incapable. It meant that I was able. And I wanted people to know. And so that's what I did. I was speaking. I linked up with Coach Ruben Sedonia, and I ended up turning my domestic violence into a defense where I wanted to learn how to defend myself despite being blind. And he was there to teach me, which led to me finding out about Credible Messenger mentors, which are former gang members, former people who once lived a life of not good, that come out and that are mentoring these younger generation to keep them out of the cells, to put down the guns, to show the change the narrative. And I embraced it. And I studied, and I traveled all over from the east to the west coast, and I did Gloves Up Guns Down, which led me in Floyd Mayweather's documentary to meet Hector Camacho Jr., which was amazing to be there when his dad got the street renamed, to be able to stand on the stage when they dedicated for Black Benji, one of the greatest in hip hop, and just to stand and be on stage, to be hit and miss. It was so many things I was doing as this blind pageant title holder, and it's like the world
Yeah.
was knowing and seeing, and I was showing my youth, because I always say I do it for my kids. I want them to see better. I ended up teaching for 3 years, and ended up wanting to learn about something else that was close to me, which was mental health, because my life was affected by mental health. From my father was paranoid schizophrenic, my mother bipolar, my brother schizophrenic, and I never knew what this was, but this was something that was never talked about. Black people didn't go to psychiatrists. We didn't go sit down and talk. That's not for us. And it's like I single-handedly watched my brothers go through counseling and get on that and become and graduate, get their GED behind the walls, learn. And I'm just like, I wanted to educate. So I went back to college and I got a second degree. in mental health counseling and became a social worker at
Mm.
a
Look at
domestic
you.
violence
Mhm.
shelter in Orlando, Florida. And
Wow.
then I loved it. I embraced it. And my mayor, a shout out to Mayor Jerry Deming, the one of the first Black mayors of ever in Orlando, Florida. He honored me and he gave me my own day, which is tomorrow, October the 10th, is
Yes.
recognized for Goddess. My maiden name is Johnson Day, for all the accomplishments I made, be in spite of being blind, but all overcoming and raising awareness and changing the narrative. And the greatest gift was to go over to Africa, was to be granted the
Hmm.
title as an ambassador for the blind and visually impaired, because I
Yeah.
wanted to teach them how to teach others over there who are blind. They're not thrown away. There's ways they can teach to raise awareness. We've been able to provide aid, to provide adaptive aids, canes, all types of things. And I did this all in 1 year. And I was so
Mm.
proud because I had a group that started off with only 100 that's now at 10,000 members globally, that were
10,000. Amen.
inspired, that were saying, I'm blind and I want to do. And I was so happy because
Mm.
that's what I wanted to show. And I was meeting so many quote unquote celebrities. I spoke at Osman Women's Expo. Shout out beautiful Fantasia, somebody whose music, whose song got me through my
Mm.
times when I was being abused. But I can meet her and she can hug me and she can tell me she was inspired by me, and met her husband and Kalante Gavin, so many people. But I wanted the world to hear these stories. So that's how I started my podcast. And even in
Mm.
spite of, I still got ridiculed because, oh, she just, they felt sorry and she won her title because she was blind. So
Mm.
me, I learned, one of the greatest lessons that I learned was my response is my responsibility. On the
Mm.
streets, when I responded in anger, when I responded in negativity, that was
Yeah.
the outcome I get. But I was like, okay, instead of me responding in negativity, I entered a pageant that had never been entered by someone who was blind. And I was the only blind person in the pageant. But this is the funny part: none of the contestants, the 20 contestants I competed with, even knew I was blind. They had no
What?
idea. I walked, I talked on my own. I didn't use a cane. I
Mm.
navigated, I answered my own questions. And when they announced my name, that I won the 2023 Miss Black America Elegant Diva title, and when she announced that I was legally blind and the first
Mm.
ever, they couldn't believe it. I got a standing ovation, and I was so happy because pageantry is a sisterhood. And now they wanted to know my world. And I met so many ladies that led to me entering another pageant that had never been won by someone who was African American or blind. And it was a
Mhm.
whole different when I won the 2024 Crown of America. And never in a million years, you never know who's watching. But you don't do, I didn't do things obviously because people was watching, I couldn't see them. My
Yeah.
new vision, it took me to lose my physical sight to really have a vision. Now they wonder,
Mm.
I've spoken
It's so powerful.
nationally over 320 nations throughout the US. Probably, I think we counted 33 out of the 50 states I spoke. Internationally, anything, it's authentic because it's hesitant. They tell me, how can you talk about some of the most hurtful things? How can you talk about, I said, because I don't have to see the rejection. I don't have to see the judgment. I can boldly talk about what was meant to break me
Mm.
because somebody needed to hear it. And then when pageantry I'd accomplished, but fashion, I entered my very first fashion show when I won my first title. The same friend, Crystal Allen, she had a very great, another phenomenal woman in the blind and visually impaired community, Anna Marie. She's the
Mhm.
founder of Not My Eyes, and it was the very first inclusive fashion show in New York. under the direction of the wonderful designer Tip Scott, wonderful pageant, model coach Jeannie Ferguson, Robert E. Knight. It was the very first time ever that they had a fashion show which featured blind, visually impaired, and sighted models. And I was
Wow.
like, I never modeled before, but what it represented, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And I did it. And I could tell you, we were all in that room. It didn't matter who could see, who couldn't. It was such love. And when the first time I walked that runway, it was like to hear the claps, to hear all the cameras flashing, the people coming up from the magazines. But the one thing I could think of, it was like I wasn't even in my body. I just was walking. I felt like release. I felt like, I felt like such a confidence, I
Yeah.
was like, I loved it. And that's how I got into fashion, and being able, from being a title holder, I got lucky enough, and with the box, and I did Fashion Week. I got to do New York and or Orlando and Miami, and I loved it. But I always had to have somebody read me what something said or tell me. And I remember I did not like that, because like I know how to read, I use braille. Why can't nobody ever think to make the clothing so we can know? So when they say if you want something done you got to do it yourself, that was my
That was.
response. I'm gonna do it myself. I could design. I had a vision. I was the queen of bling because I love shiny stuff. Who don't? So I
Yeah.
felt rhinestones are tactile. You can feel them. They come in different sizes, shapes. So braille is the same. So I thought, why can't I make a line where if it's writing, you can have the writing, but you can also have it braille. So that's what I had a vision, and I told my well now husband, and he was like, then do it. And together, like I started my design line, and I started this because I wanted to show the world, like, we can all speak the same languages together,
Mm-hmm.
and beauty comes in all shapes, sizes, and backgrounds. And I wanted
Yeah.
to make it inclusive. And when I did my very was a part of, I was the only legally blind designer here in Columbia, alongside of six other phenomenal sighted designers. When we debuted Mystique Fashions, I'm representing, we debuted my line for the first time. And as you see, you can see the braille here, and it spells out Mystique Fashions. But for you all who can see it, it says it. And so it's activewear, streetwear, and I had over 50 models, the most models and I was just like, it was amazing. And the confidence, I had models who were autistic, who were deaf, who were visually impaired, who were blind, who had survived mental health, all who were sighted, all walking together, and they were walking into their confidence in the store. It was empowering to me, and I loved it. And I ended up making a front page in the paper, and I was like, wow. And then when I got the call from Steptimius the Great, phenomenal designer, actor, unit entertainer, a model, and he told me the news that to debut at LA Fashion Week and LA Fashion Closet. And I was just like, wow, I this is my first time coming out and I got this opportunity, and they saw the vision, and these are world renowned, celebrity models, people global, and they're telling me they're honored to model my line and to model with us. And it was just like, I was so thankful. And to be able to come back to my city, to Chicago, Illinois, on
Yes.
September just on September the 12th, I was able to start three nonprofit organizations, and one of which was dedicated to my mother, which was
Yeah.
Queens Raising Queens. Because in spite of it all, my mom was my queen, no matter what. And even though she's no longer here, I wanted to change the legacy, and I wanted to let her know, even though I never got a chance to be able to tell her that it's okay. She never forgave herself. So she would never talk or reach out or let me interact with her. And that was hard. But I wanted to let her know in some way, if any of the things wouldn't have never happened in my life, I wouldn't be who I am today, you know?
Mm,
And so I wanted to
man.
do an event every year to honor survivors, because they're survivors from all different backgrounds. And Harold Washington College granted me with the blessing to be able to do this event, um, and to go back and to change the narrative. And not only that, but September the 13th, to stand on a stage in Chicago, Illinois, where my family's name was known for nothing but hurt, for
Mm,
murderers and rapists and hurt, but now to be given a Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. And when they put that medal around my neck and gave me that plaque, to stand on that stage and to let
mm,
them know the same people I know was watching wherever they are, that told me I wasn't never gonna be nothing. And even when life tried to take me out, but God can use anybody. And to receive and change that legacy from my family, and to show my children and that my nephew that I have now, that my brothers left behind, they all, my son graduated high school and college. My nephew is amazing, amazing, and trained and working in a phenomenal young man. And they know, in the thousands of my loving babies to young adults, I got so many kids I've taken in that kept out of the streets, that kept out of the jail cells, that survived blindness. I have so many stories. And that's why I say everything that I've been through, it was for a reason. I wear a lot of titles and I have to say them proudly, because it's somebody out there that's going to think, oh, my mom locked up, I can't do this because this happened to me. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. There's nothing you cannot do. And definitely anyone out there who is blind and lose their sight, whether it's like me, accidentally, or you born, it does not take physical sight to have a vision. It doesn't. It does not. And you can walk by true faith and not have sight. And I'm a living witness that there is nothing that you cannot achieve, as long as you don't let nobody set limits on yourself. So that's my story.
thank you. First, thank you so much for even, digging deep within your soul, within your pain, within the trauma, your past, to be able to, share that story. I can't even imagine how difficult that is, to have to relive that, to be able to express yourself. What I mean? I'm just so grateful for you. I'm just so proud of you. You are just, like I say, an exceptional. You are, and I got to read this, and this is the definition of a miracle. A miracle is an event that is considered extraordinary, supernatural, or divinely intervention, defining natural laws and or human scientific explanation. And you are the definition of a miracle. Like,
Yeah,
for real. Like, everything that you have done, you have, how they say the math ain't mathing. Like, you
yeah,
have turned the math that most people would have quit, most people would have been given up. And you obviously are supernatural. You are different, you know what I'm saying? And you have turned everything that was negative and found a way to overcome and make it into something positive, but not just positive, like you upped it one, like every time. Like, you know what I'm saying? You didn't just do it normally. You exceeded and superseded everything that was put as an obstacle in front of you.
Right.
and not only just jumped over it, but you ran through it, you destroyed it, you crushed it, and you know what I'm saying, and then built it into something beautiful. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yes.
Like this is no particular words to even explain your life and the things that you have done, because what you have done has never been done
Yeah.
before you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You are indeed one of a kind, truly special. And when I say this again, like I say, you're one of a kind, but we need people like yourself who are true survivors. You are the
Yes.
definition of true survivor. You know what I mean? From the time from you were a child, you know what I'm saying, all that you had to endure, but to love your mom so much to have to endure the abuse just to not to try to hurt her feelings because she was kind of questioning,
Yeah.
unfortunately, if something was true, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So you had to go through that pain and you had to continue to just, I don't even understand, how someone can be that strong. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And even after hearing your story for the second time and after reading your incredible bio and after looking at your documentary, it still doesn't make sense on how you've become this strong and this incredible. Like I say, the only explanation is that you are truly a walking miracle. You are angelic. You are an angel, a walking angel in this earth, and we must continue to protect you
Thank
and
you.
continue to honor you and just, you know what I mean, give you your flowers at all times. And I'm
Amen.
just grateful again that you shared this story with me. And of course, I have so many questions. I'm sure
Of
my audience
course.
has so many questions, you know what I mean? But you said it, you know what I mean? My first question, first I need to shout out, someone that's been very active, a friend of mine out of Houston. She says victory prevails with
And,
the praising hands, and she says amen, she did. And this is my friend, one of
okay.
the Hazel Merritt, and she's out of Houston, and she goes by Cinnamon, and she has a barbecue sauce called Sinful Sauce.
Okay.
So thank you for Hazel. She supports all of my
Thank
shows,
you.
and I'm so grateful for her. Yeah, but
Blessings.
yes, blessings, blessings, blessings to you. And I wanna my first question to you is, for someone that has um overcome blindness and knows what it's like to be able to see prior to you having this terrible car accident that you survived, how did love transform in reference to when you can see, and then what does love feel like? Like, can you, obviously, again,
Mm.
respectfully, not being able to see, but the feeling of love, like, what I'm
Yes.
saying, at some point I know you did feel love, not as much as you feel now, but
Right.
could you explain, like when you in a room and you on stage, like, the vibration, the
Yes.
love in the room, like, can you
Mm.
explain what that feels like, the love?
Absolutely. 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 You can, my love is definitely something that you can feel for through different ways. Not all, not now, not being able to see the gestures of love, right? But I can feel it. You can feel the I guess the energy. I can feel the energy in the room when I walk in the room. I can feel the genuineness. I can even feel when it's hurt and when it's pain. You get what I'm saying? Because it in tunes. You can hug someone and feel that they in need of that hug. They needed that love. So it just, I have no other choice. You can, love can be sugar coated when it's superficial, but you can't change what's inside. So for me, it's a feeling, it's an energy, it's in the act, it's in the way I'm told I love you, in the way it's said, in the tone and everything, because I have to get used to listening more. You get what I mean? And I
Yeah.
just feel like it's such a greater feeling of love because I can feel when it's genuine.
Mm. I love that, and I love that for you. I love everything that you have been experiencing since the time that you stepped outside of yourself
Yes.
and just tapped into that God body that we
Yes.
all have inside of us, and just continue to spread your wings, and you just, man, you just took off, like, in a way that where it's not even a formula for what you did. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It's not a formula to overcome the things that you have done. and to be able to find a way to still smile and to
Yeah.
love on others, you know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Let alone to love and learn to love yourself again.
Absolutely.
Um, who taught you how to pray? You know what I'm saying? Because your faith is incredible. You know what I'm saying? Who taught you
Okay.
when you were younger or at some point in your life to how to pray and to how to lean on God? Who was that
Man,
person for you?
I want to give the utmost, utmost, utmost. The person who taught me how to pray, her name is Shawan Sharice Miller, and she's actually the lady in my documentary.
Mm,
And she was a phenomenal woman who she literally taught me the meaning of true prayer. And it wasn't going up in no ecstatics and and all that. It was just to talking
mhm,
to God, just like I'm talking to you, and being just that, being telling them, letting them know, declaring it. And see, a lot of times people, they'll know you say these scriptures all the time, but it came a time when I had to live it. You know what I mean? I remember growing up, going to having to go to a church just to, because they took all the kids to church. You have to go to church. Not really knowing, learning these scriptures because you would get a prize or a piece of candy or something, but never really knowing how much one day I would live those
mhm,
scriptures that I would have to remember, knowing how much having a faith of a mustard seed really meant. When those doctors told me in 2008 I would never see again, I am now in 2025 at 45 years old, and after a transplant. I didn't get 2020, but when my daughter, the greatest gift for me 2 years ago was after that cornea transplant, being able to have them had restored my tunnel vision
mm,
and being able to have a patch taken off my eye, and
mm.
I'm blinking and I'm blinking and I'm blinking. You said this was the eighth show. It took seven
Yeah.
blinks, and we know what
Wow.
seven represents. No,
Yeah.
that really know. And when I
Yeah.
opened they told me to open my eye, okay. And
Mm,
after 13 years, everybody
mm,
can close their eyes and see black. But that's a misconception too, because I didn't see black. I saw white. The brightest white you can think of is what I
mm,
saw every single day for 13 years. Not
mm,
being able to tell whether it's night or day, completely white. And then people constantly telling me was never going to happen. I had a total of 44 minor operations. I have tubes in both of my eyes on top and bottom. I've had
mm,
injections. I've had tissue transplants, laser, you name it, I've had it. And when they took that, when I blinked and I saw my baby's face for the first time,
mm.
let me tell you something. It don't matter sometimes how we pray. You don't know how you gonna get it. But how
Yeah.
you get it is the way you supposed to get it. Cause I tell people, ask me all the time, well, aren't you mad? Cause you can mad. Did you just hear what I saw for 13 years? I
Right.
wouldn't care if I saw a little bit. I'm grateful. Because some of this stuff in the world I don't want to see.
Yeah.
I I'm okay with my vision, but I was grateful because God gave me enough to be grateful for. I had enough vision to watch my son walk across that stage, to
Mm,
watch my daughter go into high school, to be able to look at my face, to see something simple as my face.
mm,
I'm grateful. But it was that's how I learned. It's not, you have to pray and you have to mean what you pray. You have to be specific which what you pray. And you have to put some emotion in your prayer. And now I get angry. I get angry at the enemy when he try. I get mad and I pray. and I speak because your words is powerful. And so thankful
Amen.
to Miss Miller that was the person who taught me how to pray.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful because you've been praying, obviously. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Your faith is much larger than a mustard seed for sure.
yes, yes.
Um so what does manifestation feel like for you? Like the levels and the steps that you take to be able to manifest, because the things that you have manifested and made come to life in
Mm,
you in a short period of time, it's just like it doesn't make sense. It
yeah.
just doesn't make sense. The math ain't math. You know what I'm saying? It's like how did you do that? But I understand again, and what people always have to understand, what God has for you is
It's
what's
for
for
you.
you. So it doesn't matter if anyone out there are watching or who was see this interview, hear this interview later at a later time. It doesn't matter how much you duplicate every step
That's right.
or as many steps as you can of what other people did. You would never get the same outcome. We would never have the same outcome. You know
Yes,
what I'm saying? Because
yes.
that's your blessing. That's for you.
That's right.
And
That's
no
right.
one knows what you know, the people know now after they heard your story, but they wouldn't even know because as
No.
much as you smile, they wouldn't even know the pain that
Yeah.
you know
Yes,
what I'm
sir.
saying, that you endured, you know what I'm saying, but overcome
Yeah.
and destroy, like I say, and turn into something beautiful.
That's right. And the key to that, to answer your question, is also manifestation to me. It means just this, and I can only explain it like this. When I learned the blueprint for me is understanding that my response controlled every narrative in my life. Your response is your responsibility. So
Mm,
what I did was, every single time someone told me what I couldn't do or made me feel less than, my response was I was going to do everything in my power to show you differently. That's what it was. When I lost
amen.
my sight, now this is somebody coming from the back. I had all kind of education, everything, and I remember going into Wendy's and applying for the job to clean up the dining room, wiping off tables, pulling the trash bag out the trash, setting it, sweep, all of
Yeah.
these things that I was blind, but I was still a mom. I still had to do this. And that man telling me they couldn't give me that job because he felt I was underqualified. Those was his exact words. I
Mm,
said, and I can't begin to tell you how degrading that was. You know, and I was like, all right. And I remember that. I kept that in my head every time. And when I graduated and I got
mm,
my degree and I got my first, I landed my job. I remember
uh-huh.
going back into that same Wendy's with this
Mm,
same manager who didn't give me a job, wiping off tables, who was still working there, and I was
yeah.
probably making more than him. And I pulled him to the side and I let him, he didn't even remember who I was.
Yeah.
And I told him, and that's what he was like, I am so sorry. I would never judge somebody like that again. But my thing was, I have to use that reproach in everything in life to manifest. When I was told something, I ain't get angry. I fought back in a different way with my actions. I'm going to do it. I'm going to overcome it. I'm going to speak it. If I say I want to win a pageant, I'm going to do everything that I need to do to win this pageant. When I said I wanted to box, I did everything I was supposed to do that. I didn't let
Mm,
my lack of vision. When I was booked for speaking engagements and I lived in Orlando and I had to get to New Jersey, I had to get on that plane by myself. I did it.
mm,
I had to get on a train. I did every single thing. My response was, I am not gonna accept. I can't. I'm just not. And then when I'm going through every hard situation that I've had to go through, it's a choice. I could cry, I could be down, but I said, you know what? I'ma smile my way through it. That became my anthem. I don't care
mm,
what it was. I was gonna smile my way through it. I didn't care. And that's been that's been my, even now, the models that model for me now, one of them, she said, you know what, you always happy no matter what. And I know you, I said, life be life, but
Mhm.
it's my choice to smile. That's my own response. And so to manifest, it has to be that for me, it's just the way I'm responding. I'm going to choose to respond and feel that if it's something I want to accomplish, I'm going to accomplish. If it's something I'm wanting to do, I'm going to do it. If it's something that I want to believe, I'm going to do it. Because if I can't believe it for myself, I mean, I can't get mad because you don't want to.
Right,
So
right, right.
that's what manifestation is for me. Declaring.
Thank you for sharing that. And your soul, your smile, your um, it's just infectious. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? You can't help your strength is infectious. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it don't matter what anyone is going through right now. After hearing your story, you know what I'm saying? We know there's always someone that has it worse than us. We grew up like that.
Absolutely.
We always told that
Yeah.
if it wasn't by your elder, if it wasn't by a guardian, it was
That's
somebody that
it.
told us at some point in life. Like remember, there's always someone that got it worse than you. There's always someone that wished that they had that plate of
Fortunate.
food in front
Yeah.
of you. You know what I'm saying? So
That's
eat all
it.
the food in your plate. You know what I'm saying?
That's it.
Um, and you've been eating them blessings up, and you earned these blessings.
Thank
You
you.
know what I'm saying?
Thank you. Yes.
Man, I love this for you, and I just continue to wish and pray that every God continue to protect you, both you, your husband, all of your family,
I receive
your
it. Thank
children, your
you.
beautiful children. You know what I'm saying, and just everything that you that you choose to manifest, it just comes a hundredfold beyond what you envision it to be.
Thank you.
So what I mean, you just really incredible, and one of my friends just checked in too. I don't know how long she's been watching, but shout out to the famous Gina Hills out of Memphis. You know what I'm saying? TV, radio personality. You know what I mean? Appreciate you, Queen.
Hey,
She
hey,
said a
hey.
great show. She definitely enjoying you. Everyone is. I'm definitely enjoying this even in the moment. Like and
Absolutely.
and I just can't. I'm over here. When it was after you had was done telling your story, I was fighting the whole time to not be bawling and crying myself. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? I had to
Right.
keep my composure because,
Right.
I had to remind myself, like I'm sure you don't want people to be sad for you. You know what I'm saying?
No.
You want happy and
Right.
proud, and that's what I am
Yes.
with you. Like,
Thank
you know what I'm
you.
saying? I
Absolutely.
I'm able to smile like, because you overcame it. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
right.
It'd be sad if you didn't overcome it, if you was still stuck in a frame of mind
That's
to
right.
where you couldn't, get over. I'm not gonna say get over, excuse me, please, because there's no personally getting over
Right. Right.
what you
I
been through. No,
understand.
no
Yes.
disrespect. I'm gonna say that.
Hmm.
But being like I just say, I'll stick to just over being able to overcome,
Right.
what I mean? And and it takes time to
It
be able
does.
to break through, what I'm
Happen.
saying, and
Yep.
overcome things. And we shouldn't look down on anyone
No.
or, treat anybody differently, what I'm saying, who has not been able to, battle through those emotions or that feeling of them experiences and, abuse and anything that they've been through because in time, hopefully God will help them with the strength to do that,
Absolutely.
what I'm saying. But not everybody is built the same, and you definitely have proved that you are not the same. Like you are man, you the one.
Yeah.
You know
It
what I'm
was
saying?
hard. I tell people my blindness, it was a time, you could be scarred but not broken. I have
Mm,
scars, but I'm far from broken. And that's
mm,
something I definitely stand on. And I always try to be a living example, and I'm very humble. But the one thing I want people to take away from my story, my testimony, is that number one, through pain comes strength. It really does. And your trials are meant to be a testimony. Because at the end of the day, if nothing else, I want you to be thankful and grateful for the little things. I feel I just woke up every day and just expected to get up and always be able to see the sun shining. or always being able to see my face or see the you take we take the littlest things for granted. And that I'm a big mentor with youth, and I always tell them, if nothing else, you wake up every day. I don't care if all hell is breaking loose in your life, but you be thankful for the little blessing that was granted to you. You woke up, you got another chance. You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And
Right.
that's what it is. Yeah, my life, it hasn't been easy. No, I will be the first one. It's been hard. But I can honestly tell you, I am grateful for every single scar, every single trial, every single one. For for the I can just say for the one story that I have gotten, that someone said that I helped them, help save, they saved their life. That's something I don't take lightly. So if anything that I had to go through can help somebody else, then so be it. But don't take away feeling sorry. Don't take away that. Take away triumph. Take away resilience. Take away,
Yes.
is nothing too impossible that I can't do. And I'm worth
Nothing.
it. You got to know your worth. If the ones out there right now who still may be having survived the domestic violence, you may be right now surviving. You gon' have that courage to continue. One day you're gonna get through it. You have that determination to it. We all have something that can debilitate us every day. For me, physically, you could tell my disability, but we all would live with something that debilitates us every day, that keeps you from going forward. If we really think about it, you just have to know it can't stop you unless you let it. But you worth it. You worth more.
Mm, absolutely. Quick question. So being able to finally see, with the and through restoring tunnel vision, like you say, and being able to, see what your daughter looked like, be able to see your face in the mirror, what was one thing that you couldn't wait to be able to see what it looked like, you know?
Honestly, the one thing I couldn't wait to see, believe it or not, was my kid's face. But outside of that, the one thing that I really wanted to see, and it's something so simple, and I actually walked out of the eye doctor's office, and I literally sat in the grass. I just
Mm,
stared at the grass, the greenness of the grass. I
mhm,
pulled the grass up like a little kid. I smelt it, and the color was so bright because I hadn't
mhm,
seen color in all these
right.
years. And even though, so for those that might not know what tunnel vision is, if you take a ballpoint pen, an ink pen, and you take the top off of the back and you look through
Yeah.
that, that's how much clear vision I have.
Mm,
And that green was so pretty to me. You know what I mean? And that little thing, and that's because I remember thinking, when this happens, you think about the little things you miss seeing. And that was the one thing that I thought about, was I would always say I can't even tell the grass is green. But to be able
mhm,
to see that, so yeah, that was the one thing I really wanted to see again.
mm. And also, do you have a new favorite color?
Yes. My favorite color, anybody that know, they if you don't know, you will know. Just look at my page, is purple. My favorite color is purple because purple represents royalty. And I
Yeah.
feel deep in my heart that I now can say I am a queen. I feel
Yeah.
like I am beautifully and wonderfully made. I feel like I'm a royal priesthood. I have people in my life now that make me help, me have that feeling. And so now I embrace the fact that
Mhm,
I do feel like a queen, and I carry myself as such. So my new favorite color is purple. It has been that way.
mhm.
Um Ever since that I walked into my purpose, and that's what I feel.
I love that. I love that for you. Um, so is it Now, anything, of course, is possible through the Most High,
Of course.
but when it comes to surgeries and things of that nature, are you still having to go through any type of minor surgeries? Do you still have to have any upcoming surgeries to try to possibly restore more of your vision, or is
Mhm.
that supposedly, I'm going to say supposedly because again, God
Right.
can do anything,
Respect.
I'm saying,
Absolutely.
even what some say that's impossible, but scientifically, are
Yes.
they stating that with the tunnel vision that you have, is it able to scientifically, medically, I should say, not scientifically,
Hmm.
medically able to restore more? Possibly, I don't know.
Yes. No, no, no. That's a good question. So, unfortunately, for this is for this, what I have is a miracle.
Yeah,
Because they still don't understand how I even have it. So the second part, this eye, you heard how I initially lost sight, but they did the same surgery in this eye too. But unfortunately, I was in domestic violence, as I shared, and I was
yeah,
punched in this eye after the
mm,
procedure, so that
mm,
the trauma from being hit in the eye permanently damaged this eye. So, like, anything is possible, but
yeah,
medically wise, that what I have now is a miracle to them that I have that. So that's where I'm at. And like I told them, believe it or not, I'm grateful and I'm thankful. And
yeah,
to be completely honest, and I say this wholeheartedly, there has been times that even if I think, I think like, well, what if it would go? If it does, then I know that that's what was meant. But because I feel like I'm blessed, I know what it's like to walk through this world sighted and to be able to see things regularly, like they say. I know what it's like to be totally blind, and I know what it's like to be visually impaired. And the great thing about them all is I've went through the transition. I've already went through the hurt. I've already went through those stages. So whatever vision I have, I'm thankful, but I've already accepted the inner vision that I get to see each and every day since this happened to me 14 years ago is far greater than anything that I could ever want. So I'm okay.
mm. Amen to that. Amen. And again, I'm just so proud of you. I can't repeat that enough. You know what I mean? Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for sharing your story today. You
Of
know what I mean?
course.
With how dynamic, your life, how you have turned your life into. You know what I mean? I can continue to ask questions all night, but you know what I
I'll
mean?
always come back. We can do part two,
Yeah.
three, four. Just let me know.
Yeah, but we definitely gonna have you and with your time, based on your time and
Of course.
interest, you always invited, back. Such an inspiration, this.
Thank
You know
you.
what I mean?
Thank you.
And man, just God bless you.
Thank
God
you.
bless your husband, like I say, your family, and may you just continue to be protected. Thank you so much for being on Scar Tissue Talk Show for episode 8. You are what an incredible story. What an incredible
You're
story of triumph, like you say,
absolutely.
in the definition of resilience and straight miracle. Thank you so much,
You're
Goddess
welcome. Thank
Mystique
you.
Jenkins. And congratulations on being newly wedded.
I's married now, y'all. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for
absolutely.
having me. It was truly a blessing and honor. And may you continuously be blessed in all that you're doing, because what you're doing is truly remarkable. People need a platform to come on and share their stories and to be able to share hope and inspiration. So many blessings to you and all your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome.
And this last comment I must read by Hazel out of Houston. She says, "Beautiful show got me extra mushy over here, but empowered at the same time. May you both have a blessed night." Thank you,
Blessings,
Hazel.
Queen. Thank
Blessings to
you.
you. Blessings. All right, but yeah, be safe and we'll be in touch. Absolutely.
All
Much
right.
love.
Much love.
All right, peace.
Peace.
Thank you for everyone that tuned in tonight. Share this video. That's all I gotta say. You already know why, because I said it. Peace. Wow. What a story. What a story. That woman is incredible. Didn't I tell you? Was I exaggerating? No, I was not. Make sure you all support her. Her name is Goddess Mystique, her real name, Goddess Mystique Jenkins, and you can find her on Facebook. Real easy. Connect with her, support her, show her some love. But for now, I'll see you next time. This is another episode of Scar Tissue Talk Show. Blessings.